The throne room of the alien palace was silent. Tall black walls curved high into the air, shining like obsidian stone. Strange blue fires burned in golden bowls, giving the room an otherworldly glow. Alien guards stood in lines, their armor sharp, their weapons glowing. At the center, on a throne of crystal and steel, sat the alien queen. Her eyes glowed like twin stars. Her crown looked alive with energy. She was feared across worlds. Her word meant life or death that day. A human soldier was brought before her. He walked slowly, his body weak, his steps heavy. His armor was broken, his face covered in scars. He had survived battles that killed thousands. Chains bound his wrists, yet he did not bow. The guards pushed him forward, forcing him to kneel on the cold stone floor. The queen raised her hand, and the room went quiet. Her voice echoed like music, but sharp like a blade. "Human," she said, "why are you alive when so many others are dead?" The soldier lifted his head, his eyes steady. He was not afraid of her, not afraid of death. The queen's eyes moved to his scars. Long marks across his chest, deep cuts on his arms, burns on his back. Each one was a story of pain and survival. She leaned forward on her throne, her voice softer but curious. "Who did you fight for?" The throne room held its breath. Every guard, every servant, waited for his answer. The soldier's lips cracked into a faint smile. His voice was rough, but his words were clear. "For you, my queen," he said. The queen's eyes narrowed, gasps filled the room. The guards tightened their grip on their weapons. Her counsel whispered in fear and confusion. No human had ever spoken such words. Was it madness or truth? The queen rose from her throne. Her steps echoed as she walked down to face him. She circled him slowly, her long robe trailing behind. Her hand brushed the air close to his scars. But she did not touch. "Do you expect me to believe this?" she asked, her voice low. "You are human. Your people are my enemies. You should hate me, not fight for me." The soldier's head tilted, his eyes never leaving hers. "I fought through fire. I bled through war. But my fight was not for them, not for myself. It was for you." The queen's eyes flashed with anger. "Or maybe something else. You dare claim loyalty to me when your kind killed thousands of my people?" The soldier did not flinch. He leaned forward, his chains clinking on the stone. "Scars do not lie, my queen. I carry them because I chose to stand, not for land, not for empire, but because I saw something worth fighting for." The queen's advisors shouted, "Execute him now, he is dangerous. He lies," but the queen raised her hand, silencing them. Her heart beat faster than she wished to admit. She searched his eyes for deceit, but found none. His gaze was steady, his voice unshaken. The throne room felt heavier. The firelight flickered as if the walls themselves listened. The queen stepped closer, her voice just above a whisper. "If you fought for me, why do you stand here in chains?" The soldier smiled faintly. "Because I was captured, not defeated. A chain can bind a body, but not loyalty, not truth." The queen stared at him, her eyes sharp like blades, yet inside she felt a strange pull. A human, broken yet unbroken, scarred yet proud. Why would he choose her? Why would anyone bleed for her? Her silence stretched long. The council shifted nervously. The guards looked at one another, unsure. The queen finally turned back to her throne, her voice calm, but with hidden fire. "Very well, human, if your scars are truth, then you will prove it." The soldier lowered his head, his chains rattling. "I will, my queen," he said. The queen sat upon her throne once more, her heart unsettled, her mind burning with questions. For the first time in years she felt something she could not control. Curiosity, doubt, and perhaps even hope. The throne room echoed with her final words of judgment. "Take him away, but do not kill him. This one we shall test." And so began the tale of the scarred soldier and the alien queen. The human soldier was taken to the lower chambers of the palace. Chains rattled as the guards pulled him down the long stone hall. Torches burned on the walls, casting long shadows that looked alive. Every alien eye that saw him carried hate, suspicion, and fear. Yet the soldier walked calmly, his scars glowing under the dim firelight. He did not lower his head, he did not beg for mercy. When the heavy doors closed, silence returned. The alien queen remained on her throne, her mind restless. Her council stood before her, whispering in harsh voices, "My queen." "The human lies," one advisor said, his eyes sharp like knives. "He speaks poison to weaken you," another added. "Humans are clever tricksters. They should not be trusted." The queen raised her hand, silencing them again. Her golden eyes glowed brighter, but inside she was uncertain. She had ruled over empires, crushed rebellions, and destroyed fleets. No one had ever spoken to her the way this human had. No one had ever dared to look into her eyes and speak with such certainty. Why him? Why now? That night, she left her throne and walked alone into the crystal chamber, a place where the walls sang with the energy of her ancestors. The chamber reflected her face in 1,000 broken mirrors, but even in the fractured glass, she saw his eyes staring back at her. The scars on his body told a story, and she could not stop hearing his words. "For you, my queen." The next day, she ordered the human to be brought before her again. The guards chained him in the center of the hall. This time there were no crowds, only her and her closest advisors. The queen leaned forward, her voice low but strong. "You said you fought for me, human. Do you understand what those words mean?" The soldier lifted his head, his eyes calm. "They mean everything, my queen," he answered. The queen's eyes narrowed. "Do you even know who I am? Do you know how many of your people curse my name? How many died under my command?" The soldier did not hesitate. "Yes, I know," he said, his voice steady and still. "I chose to fight." He paused, his eyes burning with memory. "I did not fight for my people. They betrayed me. They left me to die. But when I saw your armies, I saw something more: strength, unity. A queen who never bent to fear. I fought for that. I fought for you." The advisors growled with anger, their voices rising. "He mocks you, my queen. End this now." But again the queen raised her hand. Silencing them, she stepped down from her throne, her robe flowing like water. She circled the soldier slowly, her eyes never leaving his face. "You speak as if you know me, but words are easy. Scars are proof. Tell me, human, how did you earn them?" The soldier's breath grew heavier. His eyes stared into the past. "One scar for every choice I made," he whispered. "This one," he touched the long cut across his chest, "for saving children when I could have burned a village. This one," he pointed to the burn on his arm, "for standing against my own commander when he betrayed his oath. This one," he traced the jagged line on his side, "for carrying a comrade through fire while the enemy closed in." The queen listened, her face unreadable, but inside something was shifting. His words struck her like blades, and yet, strangely like music, this human was no ordinary warrior. His scars were not trophies of victory. They were marks of sacrifice, of choices made against cruelty. "Enough," one advisor shouted, stepping forward. "This is dangerous, my queen." Every word is a trap, his tongue is his weapon. But the queen's hand rose again. Her golden eyes burned with decision. "No," she said, her voice firm. "He will prove his truth." The soldier lifted his head higher. "I am ready," he said. The queen turned back to her throne, her robe trailing behind her like a river of night. Her voice carried across the chamber. "If you fought for me, if your scars are truth, then you will face the trial. Only then will I know if you are loyal, or if you are nothing but a liar in chains." The guards dragged the soldier away once more, but this time there was no hatred in their eyes. There was curiosity, a dangerous curiosity, and in the queen's heart, a fire burned. She wanted to know if his words were real. She wanted to see if this scarred human was truly different. The trial would decide everything. And as the heavy doors closed, the queen whispered to herself, words no one else could hear. "For me," he said, "we shall see a story of war, loyalty, and something far stronger than fear." The night before the trial, The human soldier sat in a dark cell. Chains bound his arms. The cold floor pressed against his skin. But his mind was far from the prison. His eyes stared into the shadows, yet he saw the past. Each scar on his body was a memory. Each wound carried a story. And the Queen's words had opened those stories again. He remembered the first scar, the day fire rained from the sky. The war between his people and the Queen's armies had burned his home. He had been young then, just a soldier among many. When the order came to destroy an alien village, he hesitated. Children ran through the smoke, crying for their parents. He disobeyed his commander and shielded them from the flames. The price was steel across his chest, a punishment from his own side. That scar still burned, reminding him of the choice he made. Another memory rose, sharp as a blade. He saw the face of his commander, a man he once trusted. The commander ordered a retreat. Abandoning the wounded, the soldier refused. Carrying one comrade on his back through enemy fire, plasma seared his arm, leaving a black mark that never healed. The comrade survived, but the commander branded him a traitor. The scar became proof of his loyalty, not to orders, but to honor. He remembered betrayal most of all. His own people turned against him. They left him behind when the retreat became chaos. Alone, surrounded, he fought with nothing but his will. The jagged scar on his side was from that night. A blade had pierced him. But he refused to fall. He crawled through mud, through blood, and he lived, not because of hatred, but because something inside him refused to die. As the memories flooded his mind, the cell grew colder. Yet the soldier did not break. His scars were not curses, they were truths. Truths written into his skin for anyone who dared to see. Above the prison, in her chamber, the Queen also did not sleep. Her golden eyes stared out at the stars beyond the palace walls. The words of the human echoed in her mind. Scars do not lie, my queen. What did he mean? Why would a human, hated by her people, carry wounds for choices of mercy? It defied everything she believed about his kind. She closed her eyes, and for the first time in years, doubt touched her heart. Was he an enemy or something else? And why did she care so much for the answer? At dawn, the guards came for the soldier. Chains clinked as they dragged him through the corridors. The sound of heavy doors opening filled the palace. He walked into the great arena, a vast circle of stone and sand, where trials were written in blood. Crowds filled the seats, their voices rising like thunder. They came to see the human die. They came to see his scars mean nothing. The Queen watched from above, her throne shining in the high balcony. Her voice carried across the arena. This human speaks of loyalty. He claims his scars are proof. Today, he will face the trial, and we shall see if his words live or die with him. The soldier stood tall in the center, his chains removed, his body broken, but his spirit unyielding. He looked up at the Queen, his eyes steady, his voice calm though no one could hear it but himself. For you, my Queen, he whispered. And the gates of the arena opened. The trial of truth had begun. The gates of the arena shook as they opened. A roar of iron and stone filled the air. From the shadows beyond the gate came the first beast. It was taller than 3 men, with black scales and eyes that burned red. Its teeth were sharp like blades, and its claws tore the sand with every step. The crowd screamed with excitement. They wanted blood. They wanted to see the human broken. The soldier stood in the center, his hands empty. Only when the Queen raised her hand did a guard throw him a single blade. A short weapon, dull from age, hardly enough against a monster. Yet the soldier caught it and held it firm. His scars burned, but his spirit did not waver. The beast roared and charged. Its weight shook the ground. The soldier waited, his eyes calm, his breath steady. At the last moment, he rolled aside. The claws missing him by inches, the crowd gasped. The sand exploded where the beast struck. The soldier slashed once, cutting its leg, not deep, but enough to slow it. The battle raged, the beast striking again and again. Each attack was strong enough to crush bone. Yet the soldier kept moving, each scar reminding him of survival. He fought not with strength, but with will. At last, The beast raised its head to roar, and the soldier struck its throat. The blade sank deep. The roar turned to silence. The beast fell heavy into the sand, its body shaking the arena. The crowd screamed, some in anger, some in awe. The queen's eyes narrowed, her golden gaze locked on the scarred human. He stood over the fallen beast, his chest rising, blood dripping from his arms. But he did not smile. He did not raise the blade for glory. Instead, he turned toward the queen, his head bowed. "As I said, my queen," he whispered. Though the words were carried only by the wind, the queen gave a signal, and another gate opened. This time it was not a beast, but an alien champion. A warrior in shining armor, tall, powerful, carrying a spear of fire. The crowd cheered louder, for this was no mindless beast. This was one of their greatest fighters. The champion bowed to the queen, then turned his eyes on the human. "You will not survive this," he said, his voice echoing. The soldier raised his broken blade, his voice calm. "I have survived worse." The clash began, fast and brutal. The champion struck with the speed of lightning, the spear flashing through the air, the soldier blocked with his blade. Sparks flying, his arms trembling, each strike pushed him back. Each blow was stronger than the last, the crowd shouted, their voices shaking the arena walls. The queen leaned forward, her eyes unblinking. The soldier was thrown to the ground, the spear cutting his shoulder. Blood spilled across the sand. The champion raised his weapon high, ready for the final strike. But then, a scream echoed from the lower stands. A child had fallen through the railing into the arena. The beast's body still twitched nearby, and the child was in danger. The champion looked at the child, then at the queen, frozen for a moment. The soldier did not hesitate. With blood pouring from his side, he ran to the child. The crowd gasped as he dropped his weapon and shielded the small figure with his own body. The beast's claw twitched again, falling toward them. The soldier took the blow across his back, another scar added to his collection. But the child lived, unharmed beneath him. Silence filled the arena. Even the champion lowered his spear. His eyes wide, the soldier slowly rose, lifting the child into his arms. He walked across the blood-soaked sand and placed the child back into safety. Then he turned, his body weak, his wounds deep. Yet his voice was strong as he looked at the queen. "Loyalty is not words, my queen. It is sacrifice." The crowd, once ready to see him die, now roared with a different sound. Not anger, not hate, but respect. The queen's advisors shouted for his death still, calling it a trick, but the queen raised her hand. Her voice calm but heavy. "Enough," she said. Her golden eyes locked on the scarred human. Inside her, doubt turned into something stronger. Curiosity had become respect, and maybe even admiration. The soldier fell to one knee, his body shaking, but even then, he whispered with a faint smile, "For you, my queen." The arena was still echoing with the crowd's voices when the human soldier was dragged back to his cell. His body was bleeding, his back burned with fresh wounds, but his eyes were calm. He had survived the beast. He had faced the champion, and he had saved the child. For the people, it was enough to see him as more than an enemy. But for the Queen's council, it was dangerous. That night, the council gathered in the shadowed hall. They whispered with voices sharp as knives. "This human is a threat," one said, his long fingers tapping the table. "He is no ordinary prisoner. The crowd begins to favor him," another hissed. "If the queen trusts him, she will forget our council. Our power," a third growled. Their eyes glowed with anger, their hearts filled with fear. He must be silenced before his words reach her heart. Above them, in her private chamber, the queen sat alone. Her golden eyes stared into the flames of a tall brazier. The image of the human taking the child's wound replayed in her mind. Why would an enemy save one of her people? Why would he take scars for a child he did not know? Her advisors told her humans were selfish, cruel, untrustworthy. But the scars told a different story. In the cell below, the human leaned against the wall. Pain throbbed through his body, but he did not cry out. His mind was sharp, his ears listening to the whispers carried by stone. He heard footsteps in the dark, voices too soft for guards. The council's plan was clear before the next trial. He would not live later. When the guard brought him water, the soldier spoke softly. "There is poison in your court," he said, his voice calm. The guard froze, staring at him. "Your council fears me. They will strike against your queen." The guard spat on the ground. "Why warn us, human? She is not your kind." The soldier's eyes shone steady in the dim light. "I do not fight for kind. I fight for truth. If she falls to betrayal, my scars mean nothing." The guard left without a word, but the message was carried upward. When the queen heard of it, her council laughed in her face. "My queen, do not listen," they sneered. "The human seeks to turn you against us. His lies are poison." But the queen's golden eyes narrowed. She remembered the scars, the child, the steady voice that did not break even under pain. A liar did not earn scars like his that night. Shadows moved through the palace. Assassins cloaked in silence entered the human cell. Their blades gleamed, their hands eager to end him. But when they struck, the soldier was ready. Even chained, even broken, he fought like fire. The chains became his weapon, the stone his shield. 2 assassins fell. One escaped into the dark. The next morning, the queen summoned him once more. Her voice was sharp, but her eyes betrayed something deeper. "My counsel says you lie. Yet assassins walk the night. Why warn me, when their death could have been your escape?" The soldier, blood still fresh on his hands, bowed his head. "Because my fight is not against you, my queen, even in chains, even hunted. I stand where my truth is. If betrayal lives within your court, then my scars will protect you, not for reward, not for mercy, but because I chose it." The queen stood silent, her counsel whispering angrily around her. Her golden eyes studied the human again. Each time he spoke, each time he bled, her doubt weakened. Was this human truly different? Or was she the one changing? Her voice cut through the chamber, silencing all. "Enough. I will judge by what I see, not by whispers." She looked at the soldier, her voice heavy with command. "Your trial is not yet over. But know this, your loyalty is seen, even if it is not yet believed." The soldier bowed his head again. "For you, my queen," he whispered. The words were simple, but in that moment, they carried more weight than all the council's lies. The queen turned away, but in her chest her heart beat faster. The court was no longer safe, and she knew it. The enemy outside was dangerous, but the enemy inside her own walls could be worse. The queen's empire had known many wars, but none like the storm that now approached. From the far edges of space came a fleet of enemies older and more ruthless than humans. They were conquerors without mercy, leaving nothing but ash and silence in their path. When the first scouts brought news of burning colonies, fear spread like fire through the palace. Even the queen's strongest generals whispered of defeat. In the council hall, voices rose like thunder. "My queen, we cannot resist them," one advisor cried. "Your armies are tired, your fleet's broken. Surrender is our only chance," another said. But the queen's golden eyes burned bright. Her voice was steady as steel. "I do not bend, I do not bow. My people will stand." The human soldier was brought before her again, his body weak but his eyes alive with fire. He listened to the fear in the council and then spoke. "Surrender is death, my queen. You cannot trust the mercy of those who know none. Fight them, and I will fight with you." The council roared with anger. "He seeks to lead us astray, my queen. He is a liar." But the queen raised her hand, silencing them once more, her gaze locked on the scarred human. "You claim loyalty, you claim scars as proof. Now you will prove it not in words, not in trials, but in war." And so the queen gave him command, not of her throne room, not of her palace, but of her armies. Many generals spat in anger, but they could not defy her order. The soldier stood before the troops, thousands of alien eyes watching him. At first, they sneered, their voices sharp with doubt. "A human to lead us? Impossible." But the soldier raised his scarred arms, his voice carrying across the field. "These scars are my truth. I bled for mercy, I bled for loyalty. Now I will bleed for you, if you follow me. I will not lead you to glory, but to survival. I will not promise riches, only victory. I will not ask you to die for me. I will fight beside you. And I will not fall." The words were simple, yet they struck deep. The crowd of soldiers grew silent. Then their voices rose, not with hate, not with anger, but with respect. Even those who doubted felt something stir in their hearts. The enemy fleet arrived like a storm of fire. The skies above the Queen's world turned red with burning ships. The ground shook as the invaders landed with machines of death. The Queen stood on her throne balcony, watching the first wave of destruction. And beside her, armored at last, stood the human, his scars hidden beneath steel. When the battle began, he was not at the back giving orders, he was at the front, leading the charge. Through fire and ash he cut a path, his blade struck true. His shield rose to protect those around him. Where others hesitated, he pushed forward. Where others fell, he carried them. The alien soldiers who once doubted him now fought at his side. They shouted his name, not with fear but with pride. The battle raged for days, the sky filled with fire. The enemy was stronger, their weapons cruel. Yet the scarred human never gave ground. Each wound he took became another mark of loyalty. At one moment, when the enemy broke through the lines, he stood alone in the breach. Holding them back, his roar shook the field. His scars burned like living flame, and the Queen, watching from above, felt her heart pound with something she could not name. At last the tide began to turn. The soldiers' courage lit the hearts of all who fought. Aliens and humans alike stood together under his command. The enemy, who thought them weak, began to falter with one final charge. The invaders were broken, their fleet burned in the sky. The battlefield was silent at last. Bodies lay across the sand, smoke rose into the heavens. And in the center stood the human soldier, his body bleeding, his armor shattered, but his spirit unbroken. He looked to the Queen's balcony, his voice weak but steady. "For you, my Queen," he whispered. The Queen closed her eyes, her heart heavy with both pride and fear, for she knew this war had proven something no trial could. The scarred human had fought not as an enemy, not as a prisoner, but as her champion, and she could no longer deny what burned inside her: respect, trust, and something deeper still. The battlefield was silent after the storm of war. Smoke drifted across the broken land, the sky still glowing red from burning ships. The cries of the wounded echoed in the distance, but the enemy was gone. They had been defeated, driven back by the courage of those who refused to fall. And at the center of it all stood the scarred human soldier. His armor was broken, his body covered in blood. New scars had joined the old, each one carved into his flesh like writing on stone. He stood unsteady, yet still he stood. The soldiers around him cheered, their voices rising into the sky. They shouted his name, calling him not prisoner, not enemy, but brother. From her high balcony, the Queen descended to the battlefield. Her robe trailed through ash and sand as she walked to him. The crowd fell silent, parting as she passed. All eyes were on her, and on the scarred human who had led them to victory. When she stopped before him, the air grew heavy. The soldier knelt, his body trembling, his head bowed low. Blood dripped into the sand, his breath shallow. The Queen's golden eyes softened, her voice low. "Rise, human," she said. But he did not move. Instead, he lifted his face to her, his eyes steady though filled with pain. She saw him as no one else could, not as a prisoner, not as an enemy, but as a man who had given everything. Her gaze fell upon his scars, each one glowing in the fading firelight. Her hand, slow and hesitant, reached out. This time she touched him, her fingers brushing the broken lines across his skin. "Who did you fight for?" she whispered, her voice trembling. The soldier's lips curved into the faintest smile. His voice was weak, yet strong enough for all to hear. "For you, my Queen," he said. The words struck deeper than any blade. Gasps filled the crowd. Silence followed. Even her council, who had once plotted against him, could not speak. The Queen's hand lingered on his scars, and for the first time in years her eyes shone with tears. You bled for my people when you had no reason. You fought for me when you owed me nothing, she whispered. The soldier's head lowered again. Because loyalty is not owed, it is given, and mine was always yours. The crowd bowed their heads, warriors and servants alike, in that moment. They saw not just a queen and a soldier. They saw something greater, a bond forged in scars and sacrifice. The soldier's body swayed, his strength fading. But the queen stepped forward, catching him before he could fall. Her arms held him close, her robes stained with his blood. "Do not leave me," she whispered, her voice breaking, but the soldier smiled once more. "I am yours, my queen, in life. And in every scar I leave behind." The queen closed her eyes, holding him tighter for the first time. She allowed her people to see her not as untouchable, but as someone who could feel, someone who could grieve. Around them, the soldiers knelt, lowering their weapons. The battlefield became silent, as if honoring the scarred human's final vow. When dawn rose over the ashes of war, the queen stood upon the throne once more. But she was not the same. By her side, she kept the broken blade of the human soldier, and upon her skin she wore no armor, only the memory of his scars. She ruled with the strength of a queen, but also with the heart touched by loyalty, and in every corner of her empire, whispers spread of the human who bore his scars for her, not for land, not for empire, but for truth, and always for her.